Okay. What's another word for a mortgage?
Loan.
A what? Payment? You got to pay it, sure. Yeah, it's a loan. It's just a special type of loan. It's a loan where instead of the collateral for that loan being, say, your car or your motorbike or your snowmobile, the collateral is your house and the land. Okay? It's just a big, long loan. Instead of 5 years, it's usually 25, maybe 30 years. So I wish there was more questions like number 7 in there, which I gave you yesterday, but there isn't. But we're going to be seeing mortgages more. 90% of the value of the home So what does that mean? The bank will give you 90% of the value of the mortgage. They're not going to finance the whole thing. That's huge risk. Okay, because what if the thing goes down in value? What if next year, and everyone thinks homes just keep going up and up in price all the time. It goes in waves. In this part of the world, people have been really lucky if they bought homes 10, 20, 30 years ago. But they don't go up forever, okay? Ask people in Florida. Ask people in Arizona. Ask people in Las Vegas. What happened with their homes? Okay, this thing could be worth $300,000 next year. Well, if you got a loan for $350,000, and in a year your house is only worth $300,000, why wouldn't you walk? Right? You're $50,000 in the hole. I don't want this house anymore. Bye-bye. It's your house now. So how does the bank get out of that situation? You guys got to put your own money into it. Because if you got your own money in there, you're more likely to stay. Okay? So even this is what we call a high ratio mortgage. Conventional mortgage, they want you to put 25% down. If you don't have 25% of $350,000, then you have to get insurance. You pay extra, okay? Because you're only putting 10% down. That's where the other 10% comes from you, okay? There's a lot of rules. You can't just borrow it. You can't put it on your credit cards. You have to have that cash, okay? That's the way they get around the risk. Hey, it might be worth $400 next year. It might be worth $300. We don't know. Nobody does. Okay, so we're going to finance 90% of this. The mortgage will be, I don't know if we've seen this word yet or not, amortized. That's just the length of the mortgage. Because in a mortgage, you not only have a term, okay, the term is not 25 years. That's not the length of time. It's usually 5 years, maybe 7 years, maybe 10 years, okay? The length of time of the mortgage, that's what we call the amortization. Okay? Because nobody will give you a fixed interest rate for 25 years. Again, there's too much risk in them. Okay, yeah. You warned me. Okay? At a rate of, now we're not going to worry about term here. We're going to assume it's going to be 5.2% for 25 years, okay? They sign up for 5 years at 5.2, and then 5 years later, well, the rates are the same, they haven't changed, still going to be 5.2. Are you going, Tristan, then? Oh. Was that what he said? Okay. All right, then another 5 years, 5 times. We're going to assume the rates are going to stay the same, okay? We're not going to get into term versus amortization. Okay, compounded. Mortgages are always compounded. Do you remember? The monthly, daily, yearly. The rules in this country, I don't know about other countries, but in this country, mortgages are compounded semi-annually. When you see a mortgage rate in the big window of the bank and it says 4.8, that's what it means. Compounded semi-annually. Those are the rules, okay? They can't advertise anything else. Because the general public aren't as smart as you guys, okay? They'd rather give you like, I don't know, a 10-year rate and say, hey, it's 4%. And then you start paying it and figure out, hey, I'm actually paying 5.1%, not 4%. Oh, well, we didn't tell you the compounding, okay, factor. So to compare apples to apples, so you don't go to Royal Bank and they say it's 4.8, and you go over to CIBC and they say it's 4.95, and you think, oh, well, I'll take the 4.8. But they didn't tell you that they were compounding yearly and they were compounding daily, right? Okay, so you got to compare apples to apples. That's just consumer awareness. Okay, so what is her, what don't I know here? Yeah, that would be nice to know, wouldn't it? And that's the first step. When you go in and say, hey, I want to buy a house. First thing they need to know is, how much can you afford? Sure, you'd like to have that $350,000 house, but if you're working full-time at A&W and you have no savings, I think that's not going to happen, okay? Even if you have the down payment, you can't afford to live there, right? So you need to know how much you can afford. And then there's tons of rules on how they figure that out, okay? You can only pay up to 35% of your gross income on a mortgage payment. They work it all out. They don't want to get in trouble, right? They don't want to foreclose on you. It's a lot of hassle. They lose money. 40% your total debt. So including your mortgage and your payments and your hydro, your utilities, your credit cards, everything, that's the number they come up with. Okay? So what's our monthly payment? B. How long will it take to pay half the mortgage? Well, how long is it? 25 years. Do we think like it should be like 12 and a half years? You might, but we're going to find out it doesn't work like that. And then what is the total interest paid? Okay, so TVM, I won't write it down because I'll just show it on here. What do we know? What's N? It's 25 years and I'm making 12 payments per year. Okay? N's the number of payments here. It's 300 payments. That's how much we're making. Okay, we don't pay mortgage yearly. We pay it every month, maybe bi-monthly, maybe weekly. Okay, the more often, quicker it gets paid off. Interest rate. And there is ways to like make that a monthly rate, and then that changes your payments per year. Okay, there's a few ways to do this, but I want to be consistent. That's the rate 5.2. That's what we're going to put in. Present value. How much am I borrowing? The mortgage, the house cost $350, but I can only have 90% of that as a loan. Okay? Again, that's to reduce the bank's risk. I'm not going to get into insurance, which you need to have too, but 350 times 0.9, okay? Which is 300 and, that's not right, missed a zero. 315,000. Now, if you want to say to yourself, I know the question in the book said, how much was the down payment? Well, they're only giving you 90. It's got to add up to 100. Your down payment's 10% of 350,000 or 35,000. So that the bank's going to lend you 350,000 minus 35,000. Is that 315? It is. Okay? So either way, we need to get that number there for the present value. That's how much the loan's going to be. Okay? Everybody okay with that? Okay, 90% of 350,000 is 315. Payment. That's what I'm trying to find. What's the future value of this mortgage? How much do I owe in 25 years? Nothing. That's what it means. I'm borrowing this money over 25 years. That means in 25 years, it's paid off. Okay? So the future value is 0. That's how long this loan is, 25 years. Payments per year, I'm paying monthly, which is different than the compounding period per year, because mortgages are always compounded twice a year, semi-annually. Okay? Go back up to payment. What do we notice about the sign of this payment? It is negative. Okay? A payment, I'll just emphasize, that's a monthly payment, is 186808. Okay, that comes out as negative because, again, it's programmed to do cash flow. If the present value is positive, okay, that means money came in this way to me, okay? So my payment then, every month, I'm going to pay it. It's going to go the opposite direction. It's going to leave me. Okay? If money comes this way, if I take that as positive, this way's got to be negative. I could change the sign the other way, and it'll still work, right? I mean, I keep thinking, a couple of you guys have taken physics, right? I keep thinking physics. If I take this way as 10 positive, then if I walk back the other way, I have to take that as negative. Okay? So if I go plus 10, minus 10, I'm right back where I started. Essentially, I didn't move at all. I'm not 20 paces away from where I used to be. I'm right where I started. Okay? So if that way's positive, this way has to be negative. It's the same with cash flow. So just to show you, if I would have made this negative, okay, say that that was an investment. I'm the guy lending the money. It's leaving me. Okay, I'm giving him 315,000. Then this payment is gonna go the opposite direction. I'm gonna get his payment every month. Okay, so if that way's negative, this way's positive. So it doesn't really matter, but one has to be different than the other, because the money's going two different directions. Right? So if that makes sense, great. If not, don't worry about it. It's just 1868 and 08 a month. Okay? But just like we did before, remember how if you invested money, it went out, and then the future value was negative? And I said, well, just make future value negative. And nobody had a problem doing that on the test, right? Okay? It went out, I invested it, and then at the end of 10 years, let's say, I got it back. Okay? So that way's positive, this way's negative. Same thing. All right. So, how long will it take to pay off half the mortgage? In other words, I don't want my future value to be 0. I want it to be half of, let's change that back to positive, half of that, right? I borrowed 315,000. What's half of 315,000? I want that to be my future value. 157 but remember that has to be negative and 500, right? Okay, then it'll be half paid off. my payment is still going to be, I got to change that to negative now. Okay, everything else is the same, but how long is that going to take? Okay, it was 300 months was 25 years. This is months. How many months is that? 195, 0.1. Can't really have 0.1 of a month, but we'll talk about that in a sec. Months, which is, how many years is that? Let's do that on here. Is that over 12 and a half years? $16.25 years. So why is that more than 12 and a half years? Because your first few payments, and you guys will learn this when you get a mortgage, hopefully, if your mortgage person is good and educates you, you pay a lot of interest. You barely pay off anything at all. Those first few payments, especially the first year, like 95% of that payment, $1,800, is just interest. You're only paying off a tiny bit of the mortgage. I don't know what it is, maybe 50 bucks. Of that 1868, you paid $1,800, let's say, went to interest, $68, reduced the principal from $315,000 down only 68 bucks. It's shocking. Near the end of the mortgage, like after 24 years, most of that, the opposite happens, okay? So $1,800 reduces the principal, and only 68 bucks will be the interest part, okay? It's hard to see that without a graph and an amortization schedule is what it's called, okay? I'm just gonna tell you, that's what happens, okay? So out of that 25 years, it takes 16 years to pay off half of it, and then 9 years to pay off the other half. So the more you can put in extra in this in payments in the beginning, you'll save thousands and thousands of dollars in interest. Speaking of which, what's the total interest paid? How can we do that? Total interest is the amount I put in total minus the amount of the loan. Okay? Well, how much did I put in if I'm paying $1,868 a month for 25 years? That's how much I'm paying a year for your mortgage. That's how much you're paying over the life of that home. $560,424. Okay? 12 times a year, 25 years. Does that seem a little shocking? Now, do you know why? Who reported yesterday? Toronto Dominion made close to $2 billion in the last 3 months because they lend out $315,000 and they get back $560. Okay, there's like 240 something thousand just for that one transaction. How many millions of mortgages do they have across the country? Okay, so total interest, I need to subtract that, and this is what this person would pay just to the bank, just for the privilege of owning that home. $250,000. That's the total interest, right? Cool stuff, eh? Okay, you need another one here. Zippy borrows 4,000 bucks at 4.9%, compounded monthly, and pays it back at a nice comfortable $200 a month. How long does it take? And what is the total interest paid? Okay, so TVM, we got payments, can't really use a formula here. What's N? That's what we're trying to find, right? Don't know. What's the interest rate? 4.9. He borrows 4,000 bucks. Is that present value or future value? He borrows it today, right? Payment. Again, if I'm taking 4,000 as positive, I got 4,000, I'm paying it back at 200 a month. That's in the opposite direction, okay? 4,000 in my pocket, 200 leaves my pocket every month. So the sign has to be different here. Otherwise, it's not going to work. What's the future value? Yeah, like it's a loan. It's going to get paid off, right? It's 0. Payments per year, month, and it's also compounded monthly. So this one's the same. N is what I want to know. 20.9066 something something something. Okay, that's how long it takes. Okay, so that's kind of fine for an answer. Is it a nice round number? So what's going to happen with this last payment? Is he going to pay more than he needs to? It's got to be exact, right to the penny, right? This is a contract. So what we have to do to find out the total amount of interest is we have to know, like, he's not going to make 21 payments. Why would he pay more? Just because it didn't round up properly. Okay, my payment didn't work exactly. Now, usually in a bank, they'll do that. So you know it's exactly the right amount of payments. So the last one is correct, right to the penny. Okay? And he's not going to pay just 20 because now this person's going to get ripped off. He's not going to pay it all back, right? Okay? So what you have to do is go, that's got to be 20 for B. So change that to 20 and then find out after all those payments how much he still owes, because he still owes something. Because that's where this 0.9066 comes in, right? But how can you have 0.9 months? Like, what does that mean? I pay it in 3 weeks? Okay? So after 20 payments, I still owe $180.62. Okay? That's not quite 200 bucks. So I still have 180.62 to pay after 20 payments of $200, okay? So that's a little trickier, I think. Does it make sense? Okay, like how do I have 0.9 of a monthly payment? Doesn't make any sense. You can have 20 payments, you can have 21 payments. This is somewhere in the middle, okay? So you gotta kind of work backwards. He makes 20 payments at 200, then he makes a final payment of 180.62 at the end of the following month. Then he's all paid off. He's paid off exactly 4,000 bucks. Okay, so, but the question is how much interest was paid? Well, add this up. I paid 20 times 200 and 180.62. That's 4,000. That's 180.62. Okay, so that's how much he paid for this thing. That's how much he got. So the interest is just the difference, right? Which is actually this last payment. It worked out so that that payment was the interest he paid. We should say this is months, right? Because it doesn't really specify. That's not weeks, it's not years. It's just over 20 months. So now how would this actually work if he went to a bank and he said he wanted 4,000 bucks and I can pay about 200 a month? What would they do? They would round this to 24 and say, well, let's work it out to exactly a 2-year loan. Your payment will be a little less than that. He'll say, okay, perfect, right? That's how they'll actually do it if you went to a bank, because they don't want to mess around with this 20-month stuff and have some left over. Okay, so you need kind of that for one of the questions, because you got to kind of work backwards a bit. So same page, just a couple more. Number 11, it says write out an amortization table. Skip it, okay? Don't worry about that. But you can still do, I think it's A and C, and maybe part of B. Just don't do the table. Okay?